was a celebration of professionalism as family members, friends, and associates gathered to mark the 60th birthday colloquium of veteran journalist Mr. Kunle Ajibade in Lagos. Chaired by former governor of Ogun State, Chief Segun Osoba, it featured a special citation by Nigerian poet Mr. Odia Ofemun on the journey of Mr. Ajibade as a journalist.
It came on stream as an impetuous gap filler after the dictator General Sani Abacha shut down all the major newspapers in the country, about 22 titles in all, in one fell swoop in 1995. I should add that Ajibade's subsequent arrest and kangaroo trial has since become a means of characterizing the devilry of the regime. It came as an animal unknown to Nigerian jurisprudence, as I was reminded recently in a piece by Demola Adebambe, one of the most durable journalists at the news, who stressed that we really can talk now about accessory after the fact of treason, publishing materials which could obstruct the work of the coup plotters tribunal and misleading the public. Although we may talk about the death of sedition as a Nigerian fact, we know how Ajibade's imprisonment under the dark-goggled one has revised the ease of regression unless we are all truly eternally vigilant. His release by General Abdul Salam Abubakar, the enforcer in waiting after General Ibrahim Babangida stepped aside, is part of what gives our celebration today its cutting edge, the triumph of freedom of speech over the assassins of the people's right to know.
Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka described Mr. Ajibade as a respectable doyen of journalism in the country.
It was an eye-opener for me, literally, because I'd reached a point where I felt that certain individuals in society were untouchable. And one could only hope that their own peers in the cult of immunity, because it's a cult, it's a cabal, that sooner or later they would fall foul among their own peers and then will be rid of the catalogue of those who wanted to get rid of, would at least reduce by one, and thereby mutual elimination, mutual war of attrition will eventually be left with a reasonably sanitized society. Among those whom I thought were totally, completely untouchable were the police. And by that I don't mean the man in the street, the scapegoat, the one who's arrested for taking 500 naira bribe, or who overreaches himself and shoots the poor student or athlete at the roadblock because he wouldn't part with his 100 naira. No, I'm talking about those at the very, very top. Normally, they just eased out. You wonder why they're eased out, but it's simple. It's really a falling out among thieves. And it was Kunle Ajibade's journal who first made it impossible for one head of the Nigerian police to continue in office. I remember that I was puzzled. I didn't realize at that time how deeply Kunle's investigative journalist zeal was, and I called him when he began his assault, step by step, on that Inspector General of Police. I remember saying to him, "Are you sure?" I said, "Be careful, because these people, they're mafia, and they protect one another. Are you sure you have all your facts right?" He said, "Prof, don't worry, I have these facts correct." So I said, "Well, in that case, I'm going to sit back and enjoy the fun." And eventually, he got his man. I remember that when the major expose came out, there was a huge cartoon of a pot-bellied, impossibly pot-bellied police officer. And with the caption, I can't remember the caption, but the identity was unambiguous. There was no euphemism about it. He named names. It was Tafa Balogun at the time.
Several notable Nigerians who attended the colloquium paid tributes to the remarkable work of journalism by Mr. Ajibade.
Kunle Ajibade represents somebody we should celebrate in terms of his self-worth. And my country has over time lost its values and denigrated the value of the self-worth of a human being and concentrated on net worth.
The celebrant represents the triumph of moral authority over sheer power and the misuse of it. It's also a clear evidence of the saying that man proposes and that indeed it is God that disposes. Because if we were to go by what was planned as at that time, I cannot imagine that we'll be gathered here today to celebrate the celebrants. Kunle, you represent hope in more ways than you will ever realize. Because when I was invited to join the establishment of the news, the group, when we meet to discuss, I used to look at him, very quiet, he doesn't say much. But I used to ask myself, we are about to start a journey that will be very challenging, even though I never imagined that it would be as challenging as it was. I never imagined for one day. In fact, one day I said to myself, Shalagbaro Oshoko Babai. What still, the investment I put in the news is the first rent I ever collected in my life. And I think it shows the synergy that we need to achieve as a people, working together. If we are going to change this system, we must all agree to play our part well and be willing to make the sacrifice that is required. The celebrant made a lot of sacrifice, and it took a bullet for all of us. Because in truth, even the story for which they came for him, he didn't write it. Somebody else did. And not for once did he betray anybody to say, look.
Governor Ralph Aregbesola of Osun State and former First Lady of Ekiti, Mrs. Bisi Fayemi, speak further on the man, Kunle Ajibade.
Your Excellency, how do you describe the person of Mr. Kunle Ajibade?
Simply amazing. Just simply amazing. That's the word.
And what is your word?
That summarizes my own perception, recognition, and understanding of him. An amazing human being.
He has done a lot for this country, especially when it comes to making journalism the kind of profession it is supposed to be. Kunle and I went to the University of Ife together, now Obafemi Awolowo University. And right from the time when he was in Ife, it was obvious that this was going to be one of our leaders in the country. Over the years, Kunle has made many sacrifices for the profession he loves dearly. He has given a lot in the pursuit of good governance and democracy in Nigeria. I see him as someone who is a worthy role model, what the Yorubas call the quintessential Omoluabi, someone who has character, someone who has self-worth, as one of the guests here said today, over net worth. Today in Nigeria, we seem to be celebrating a whole range of people for the wrong reasons. We celebrate them because of the positions they hold, because of how much money they have, or because of how much they can talk on social media. Kunle Ajibade is someone who we should celebrate for simply being a good man, a good husband, a good father, a loyal friend, and someone whose way of life is worthy of emulation. As Kunle Ajibade clocks 60 today, I wish him all the very best. I wish him God's blessings, and I pray that Nigeria and generations to come will benefit from all the wisdom and all the good things he has done for this country and that he continues to do.
Mr. Kunle Ajibade is an example of a bold and courageous journalist that shaped Nigeria's socio-political space.
Look, it all started, as you must have been told, at school, particularly at the University of Ife. That was a turning point in our lives. Many of those who now are met and said that we should do something. And what that meant was that there was a serious political conscientization. Okay? If people are not informed at certain stages in their lives, there is no way, if they are not conscientized, there is no way they will grow up and have a vision, either as politicians or as journalists. So I am saying that it is important to have structures, educational structures, that will mount that campaign of consciousness. And it can be done in schools, in secondary schools, in the universities. For me, it was in the university that it all started, from. You were a member of, the press club, and you knew what it meant when you criticize people and the way they respond. Okay? That was how it all started for me.
So, a lot has been talked about your role in driving investigative journalism in Nigeria. Tell us, for now, with the challenges, like Professor Shoyinka said, a lot of journalists being killed in the point of investigation and all that. What do we like to see more in terms of guaranteeing journalists that are involved in this, and also what would be advised to younger journalists in this country?
You cannot wish away the clash between those who control the space and the journalists. That tension is perennial. It will continue to be there. The tension may lead to death. It may lead to detentions. Because you see, the politician want to control that space, and you also want to control the space with your stories by conscientizing people. Okay, by conscientizing people to disobey them. They won't like that. So there's no way you can rule out the possibility of being killed in the process, the possibility of going to jail in the process. What we just need to do is to have that courage. Look, if you don't die by the sword, you die by any other means. Okay? That's what Prophet Muhammad said. Okay? And that was during the battle, he was waging that time. Some of his followers were afraid of dying. And you must die for something. Okay? And it's better to die for a noble cause. All right? Dele Giwa died at 39. We are still talking about him. Che Guevara died at 39. We are still talking about Che Guevara, Ernesto Che Guevara. Okay? How old was Jesus Christ when he died? Are we not still talking about him? So the thing is to have the courage and vision to make your own contribution to the betterment of humanity.
He survived the brutality of the military era and was uncompromising in his job. He has made his mark and will go down in history as one of Nigeria's renowned investigative journalists.